To start with you first, you've been attached to this project since its initial conception as a short film, and it was through your performance in Sneaky Pete that caught Anna and Laura's attention. They both credited you with the fact that you took a chance on them. What was it initially about Anna's writing that resonated with you and made you want to be a part of this project?
I mean, I think uh it was a really smart take on a subject that I thought was really important to explore and to make a movie about. And yeah, it was a short film that was really well written and smart and poignant and without being like too didactic. And I was like, to, I want to do this. And I'm so glad I did. It was like a really wonderful experience. And they were both such great collaborators and like very smart and like compassionate women. And and then of course, when they were like, we want to make this into a feature, I was like, 100%, I'm in. And yeah.
Your performance in this is so heartbreaking. Ariela, similar for you, as they made that transition from short film to feature, it creates the opportunity to expand this world and introduce new characters. Outside of working alongside your sister, what was it about the script that connected with you?
Um, for me it was mostly the short film that got me on board. Um, yeah, I was just so impressed with it and then what they were able to flesh out in the script about communication and sort of the gendered and societal elements of the way that we communicate and express ourselves and hear each other, I thought was really fresh and something I don't think I'd seen before. It's something I'd seen maybe discussed in the general public or
Mm.
maybe amongst friends, but I hadn't seen it on the big screen or in any sort of mainstream capacity. So that was very exciting to me. And also just the coming of age summer fun movie always been a favorite genre of mine. So just so many appealing little things about this movie that made it a no-brainer.
And I think what's so interesting about the dynamic between your two characters in the film is that it flips your real life roles, with Libe playing the younger sister and Ariela the older. Were there any choices you made for your character that were influenced by qualities or traits that you see in your sister? And did it separate into these reverse roles allow you to discover new sides of each other?
You want to go first?
I was gonna let you go. Um, yeah, I don't know if I had been influenced. I all I know is I say quite often, I have said today even that I do think older sisters are God's strongest soldiers, and I'm such a little sister. I just got through life because Libe did it first and then told me what to do. So I give Libe so much credit to my general well-being and development. So then being on the other side was so interesting, just sort of this sense of responsibility for another person, the also the sort of agency of being the one to do it first, was really interesting to explore, and I do think it affected how Libe and I have continued our friendship and relationship as siblings.
Yeah, and I think also like on the flip side, opening myself up to be the younger sister and like opening up myself to like be able to let myself to be taken care of by Ariela, like but to be
Mm.
able to be the younger sister that like I think there is an element of like what?
Historically had never been done.
Well, I just there's like a level of like I don't know, as the older sister, like you need to make sure that I don't know, like there's like on some unconscious level, like there is a level of like the older sister, you feel like you need to like have your shit together. You feel like you can't like let yourself be in a vulnerable position with like your younger sister in a way that like you can be vulnerable, but in a way that like requires being taken care of in a way that this like
Mm.
role required. And like it was interesting that push and pull of like not wanting to let myself be taken care of, which I think also Jane was experiencing in the movie too, of like not wanting to be taken care of and wanting to be strong and whatever. And so I think that there is like a really interesting nuanced relationship there that we've created that was a product of us flipping these roles. And also like the other thing I've been saying is like I think it's kind of an amazing social experiment, like getting to like pretend to be the opposite, like the older or the younger sister in real life. That like I think really opens up a sibling relationship like really beautifully. And yeah.
You were both so convincing. I had to Google to see who was the older and younger sister in real life. And Libe, you've mentioned in previous interviews that a big part of your process is stepping into the shoes of a character before you even get to set. While there are similarities between the short and the feature, Anna said that they're two distinct films. Was that distinction something that influenced your preparation for Jane in the future? With this being such a personal story to Anna, how much did you lean on her in bringing this character to life?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, they're totally different, but are like the same human in a lot of ways. One thing I really appreciated about working with Anna was that like because this is obviously like a very personal story to Anna, and before we went in and did the short, I went over to her place with Laura, who directed the short, and the three of us sat there, and Anna like really openly told me like her story, and we it was a very safe, beautiful moment of, you know, her being like, I'm handing this to you, and we spoke very openly about everything, and that open dialogue only continued and deepened as we moved on with the projects. And yeah, I think I really wanted to, I really just wanted to do this life and these circumstances justice and like hold it with the weight that it deserves, because it's a very serious thing and affects people's life. And I really, I was very aware of like the weight of it going into it. And I did a lot of objective research from the outside going into like particularly the feature, because I was like, once I'm there I want to be like immersed and in it, and like um yeah. And I guess also because the feature is, the short is a this time, this like snapshot of this person's life in the wake of this thing happening, and the feature is, it starts out as like this summer fun movie that like gives
Yeah.
more life to this person and personality, and we discover who this human is in a way that like didn't really exist in the short. So that was like a whole fun new thing of getting to build like Jane's personality aside, like aside from this trauma, and who this person is. And yeah.
I think those were like really clever how they were able to incorporate elements of the short into the feature. And Ariela, I think one of the reasons why this film is so compelling, it's so raw. And when Jane shares what she's gone through, Lacey and the rest of the family struggle to find the right words, which feels so true to life. And I'd love to hear about your research that you did for this role and the conversations that you had with Anna to bring the groundedness to your performance.
The research going into this role is interesting because it's not so much Lacey's story, it's not her experience, it's her receiving someone else's. And I think through conversations with Anna and her story and watching the original short and just everything they were trying to say about communication, also taking sign language lessons just in preparation, um, it just kind of became the experience of how Lacey is experiencing it, because she's discovering it all in real time as it goes. She doesn't know what she's doing. She doesn't know what the
Mm.
right thing to do is. And the process of finding that with Lacey, I think, was one of the most compelling things about working on this movie.
I have a follow-up question for you about that later. But Libe, you know, the film beautifully portrays how it's up to each person to choose whether or not they share their trauma and how they do it. And Jane expresses this through contrasting nonverbal and verbal communication. It's so breathtaking to watch on screen. How did you approach capturing those different sides of her journey and creating that space for yourself to go to the vulnerable places needed for those scenes in particular?
I think it's a lot of like, because a lot of what survivors go through is, it is a process of figuring out and what it is to tell your story, and it is a lot of um you know, seeing as you go, how people will receive it and what the best ways to communicate these things are, and like if there is a good way to communicate it, and like that pressure of like finding a good way to communicate it when it's like there really is no right way of doing it. And I think that I just really tried to like open myself up to those questions and that unknown, and like allow myself to discover in real time as we were shooting those things what those experiences really were and are. And yeah.
Beautifully said. And Ariella, you just talked about this, but sisterhood and communication are such important themes in the film. And that moment when Jane shares what happens to her that night highlights the role Lacey plays in holding space and showing how much can be conveyed simply just by listening. There's such an interesting parallel, I think, to acting and coverage. And while Lacey's reactions aren't seen on screen, they undoubtedly feed into Libe's performance in that moment. How did you approach that scene in particular? What was it like getting to see your sister go to those emotional places?
I mean, shooting that day was such a lesson for me because I was mostly just there supporting Libe in both the scene and in the space as we were shooting it as an actor. Watching Libe go to those depths was obviously impressive and amazing to watch, but also clearly a difficult thing that as her sister I just wanted to be there for. So it kind of just stripped this element of artifice. It was just about being there. Um, and that was, yeah, quite an interesting lesson and something that I do think about. We did a couple little exercises on that day of just listening and repetition and stuff like that to there was a level of vulnerability and access in that space that felt very safe and yeah, I don't know how exactly to express it, but it was a really contrary to the subject matter, it was a really nice day on set.
It's a really impactful scene in Liebe. I'm such a fan of those like quiet, subtle moments. And I think what makes this film so impactful and why it's going to stand the test of time is its ability to make others feel seen. And that final moment between Jane and Dylan really beautifully captures the power of this story and the medium itself. What do you hope audiences take away from this film? And have you had the opportunity to see firsthand the impact that it's had?
I mean, I think I was at one screening. I've been at one screening so far, or two screenings. One screening, I think. And it was really amazing. The energy is palpable in the audience and watching people like feel it and hearing sniffles in the audience and stuff. It's really, I don't know, we make these things and we put all of ourselves in them, and it felt like we were like on an island in Michigan in this like lake town, and getting to see people like really affected by it and moved by it is really really amazing. And I guess as far as what I want people to take away from it, it's I guess there's there's the speech elements and there's the more sort of like teachy elements of the whole thing, but I guess there's something about like there's no right way to process like this type of trauma, and like no right way of communicating it. And like I think opening them opening ourselves up to like the messiness of processing and that being okay, and the messiness of communicating these things and allowing that to be like fine and safe within like your community and people, and to have empathy for that messiness in each other. And yeah.
Yeah. I also love the connection between your two characters and how they instinctively know when the other needs them, particularly in that scene where Lacey shares why she thought it was important for her to be home for the summer and reminding Jane that she's more than her trauma. Has there been a moment for each of you where the other has shown up in an unexpected way that comes to mind?
Yeah, totally. I feel like I don't know if, what were you gonna say?
I had nothing. What were you gonna
Well, I just
say?
mean like little ways. Like we don't, I don't know, like Ariel and I have become like we're very good friends, and I think like showing up for each other in like little ways, like even things like I was gonna go to like Christmas at my partner's in out of town, and like Ariel was gonna watch my cat, but she was like very sick and like still came and watched my cat despite being sick. And I was like, I'm so sorry, I like need this. And and just like things like, that are, they seem like inconsequential or whatever, but like they matter and are important. And like it's nice to like have my sister and have like to have this person in the world that I'm like I know we can like rely on each other and show up for each other. And yeah.
Yeah, I think especially now because we didn't live to in the same place for a while, and now we're kind of not neighbors, but by New York standards, we're neighbors because we're off the same train. So we've become sort of neighbors, and it is just sort of constant at this point. It's never, I hadn't even thought about it this much, which I probably should.
Even yeah, and things like I don't know, like especially being in the same industry and being able to like I don't know, like there's really hard, it's hard. It's a shitty industry and it's really difficult and being able to like shocker to anyone who's
What?
but yeah, but being able to like be in the trenches together and like, build each other back up and like be there for and like yeah.
I love that the both of you approach it with the art being first and then the most important thing. And the combination of performances, the writing, and the direction, this film is such a masterclass. And it's going to stay with audiences after the credits have rolled and started a lot of conversations. With you two being so close, what's the scene of your sisters that you're most excited for audiences to see?
I mean, I love the police station scene that yeah, we were just discussing that I think is incredible. But I mean, the whole movie is Libe being amazing. That I think that's like the major one of the major selling points for me when I tell people to see the movie in general is Libe.
Oh, thanks. I think that like a lot of the fun of the movie comes from Ariela's performance and a lot of
Yeah.
the like and I think that the movie works because it's not just this heavy thing. It needs that levity. It needs that like, and a lot of that comes from Ariela and her performance. And I'm excited for people to see that.